they learnt a lot from that. But what they've mainly learnt is that it's actually contagious. Once people start to badmouth or talk badly about something or negatively or complain, it gets contagious. But what's happened is, and what we just spoke about before, there's no problem fixing or problem solving. There's no one looking in the mirror and going, how do I actually take my little baby steps to make things better? And Jordan B. Peterson says it perfectly. Do not judge the world before you clean your bedroom.
We've got some fresh new young talent doing some things that I know you haven't heard before.
1, 2, 3, listen.
Welcome to Finances, your home for all things financial, investment, money and lifestyle. Hosted and curated by the very talented team of certified financial planners and Burke Britton Financial Partners. This is the Finances podcast. This is number 2 for the day. It's, what are we? It's the 11th of April. I don't like saying the episode number because they come out in different orders, but today's guest is Mitch Falzon from the Geelong Agency. Mitch, we've already done a podcast before it already started, so it's good to have you in. Thanks for joining us.
Absolute pleasure.
Now, I can't believe that we haven't actually met. Like, how long have you been in and around Geelong circles in property and just living in Geelong?
Well, I've been in Geelong my whole life.
Yeah.
So I'm proud to say I'm a purebred Geelongian.
Yep.
Been here for 29 years. That is my year of birth as of 3 days ago. So I'm 29 years old, been here all my life. Real estate, I just say 10 years because I started when I was 20 and I've had a 2-year sabbatical in that time. So I had a 2-year break. But overall, I've been constantly looking at property and dealing with property. And even in my 2-year sabbatical, I could seriously tell you the amount of times people called me in my 2-year sabbatical saying, hey, Mitch, I'm selling a house. I still want some advice. Can I get it from you?
When you had a sabbatical, you disappeared for a couple of years, did you? Mm-hmm. Where'd you go?
Mm-hmm. I stayed in Geelong. I was doing a bit of travelling. When I say travelling, it was very minor stuff, like 2 weeks, little 2-week stints. But I just got back to planet Earth, mate. I just got back to planet Earth. I got caught up trying to chase the dollar signs, as most young entrepreneurial people do.
So is that part of your 10 years? You had 2 years out?
Yep, 2 years out completely. Yep. Like, raw dogged it, got straight out. And
how long ago was that?
I returned to real estate 18 months ago.
Okay.
Now, yeah. So in that 2 years, I went to uni. I picked up books. I got rid of a lot of toxic people from my life, a lot of bad friends that were holding me back. The list goes on. I met a lovely girl at the time. We're not together anymore, but she was lovely. Met a great person. She was that was great fun there. What else? Got into hospitality, so got grounded.
In Geelong?
Yeah.
Where did you work?
Right down the road there at Polo Rotisserie. I was the chicken guy. Everyone still calls me the chicken guy. Managed at Sailor's Rest, managed pizza bar, did some cafe work at Paddington. Just real grounding, humbling sort of work. But I tell you what, I love hospitality. So prior to real estate, I was a hospo head as well. Yeah. And I've loved it.
There is a correlation between hospitality and real estate. I think it's you can probably speak to it. Well, let's speak to it. So I would argue that you're quite unique in. I've seen some of your social media. This is the first time you and I've actually met, but I get a sense that relationships are paramount, and you're delivering on service and relationships as everything. So how do you see those parallels between your tendency to hospitality and real estate?
They're hand in hand. I went to a restaurant the other day and I realised I feel like especially in real estate, the days of seek.com.au, those are gone. I just go out to a restaurant, keep an eye on a couple of the waiters that are giving great service, and I seriously, by the end of the dinner, I end up handing over a business card and say, hey, if you ever thought about getting into real estate, reach out. Because the level of service, and considering the low pay grade as well for the level of service that some people deliver in hospitality, you can just already see that some certain waiters and waitresses, they have the traits that suit real estate to a T.
Did you have someone when you joined real estate that spotted you in that same sense and said, listen, you'd be good for real estate?
Not in real estate, but in sales, yeah. Okay. There was a group of about 4 or 5 gentlemen at Sailor's Rest, and they were having a good old time. I think they polished a bottle of wine each themselves. But the thing was, they were meant to just pop in for a quick dinner, and they said anyway, because of the service I was giving, and I was upselling them and getting them an extra bottle of wine every 10 seconds. by the end of it, they were having a great time. And he said, mate, we're here just because of you. You know, if you ever want to get into sales, and he handed me a business card. And that's when I sort of went, maybe this is something for me to consider.
That concept of employing for personality is something that more and more of recent time we've thought about, like rather than trying to employ for education or past experience, or like actually looking at the individual and saying what are the qualities they have. We of recent time have spent some energy and effort in essentially personality profiling people to work out where are they best suited. But importantly, you kind of know when you come across a good human whether or not they would be like employing for good people first and foremost, and if they've got a willingness to educate and upskill, you can teach the rest.
Of course, yeah, of course. And I think just because they're a good person doesn't mean you need to hire them straight away. There's a couple of other things.
Yeah, they might have to have some capability.
Of course, of course. But that, I think, should be the basis for... I want to hire someone at the moment. I'm not going to, but I really should. Everyone around me is saying I really need to, but I'm going to hire someone at some point. And I'm not going to cut any corners on who I hire. It needs to be a certain person with a certain type of morals, and then the rest I can teach. That's fine. But I'm pretty stern on not hiring someone that's already with another company. I want someone green as anything, that I can teach all the right ways of doing or my way of doing things. But at the forefront of who I choose is, are they a good person and are they going to put in the work?
Now, we've managed to digress, which I do always in my podcast.
We're on a podcast. That's like a normal part of it.
I think that's the key. Long form, you can go in whatever direction you want. But listen, we've mentioned the Geelong Agency briefly, but who are you? Who are you at the Geelong Agency, and how long has the Geelong Agency been around?
So there's myself, Nathan, and Bindi. So Nathan's the Director and Officer in Effective Control. He is the boss. So he approached me when I was in hospitality, walked in. At the time, it was just him and his assistant. They hadn't even opened the doors yet. And he came in and said, Mitch, look, I'm looking at... Well, no, he actually said, do you want to get dinner? And I said, yeah, let's catch up for dinner. So we caught up for dinner and he goes, blah, 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 family, friends, what's happening in life. I'm looking at opening a new office. And I went, I see where we're having dinner. And he said, would you ever think about getting into real estate? And I'm not going to say the words I used verbatim, but it involved an F-bomb. And I said, F no, I'm not doing it. And he goes, why? And I go, look, I'm not interested in the industry. I just, at the time I was painting it with a very clear brush. I had a really bad experience with the office I was at prior, and call me judgmental, but I was looking at agents at other offices and I was going, I don't think that's the kind of person I want to work with. I've seen and heard how they do things behind closed doors and it's atrocious. And that was for several different offices. So I left the whole industry. And Nathan said, Mitch, I'm going to be client-centric. And I said, that's what they all say. That's what they all say. They're going to be client-centric. And he told me a little bit more and he said the plan. And the thing that caught my attention was he said, look, I'm not hiring anyone. If I don't get you, then it's just going to be me and that's fine. And I've gone, why me? And he goes, because you literally embody the whole service-based mentality and the client-centric mentality. Because for me, if I'm going to do something, it's got to be at the basis of service, and that's it. That's at the forefront. And anyway, I stepped away. We said goodbye. Was probably 3 months later when my partner at the time said to me, Mitch, you need to draw a line on a piece of paper, write pros and cons of going back to real estate. And before I left Nathan, he did say to me, he goes, look, Mitch, if you make me an offer, I will very likely say yes. So that also pricked up my ears. So I wrote pros and cons. I wrote down all the pros of going back to real estate, which filled up really quickly. And that shocked me, like how quickly I managed to fill up that side with this pessimistic ideology of what real estate was at the time. And then the cons, there was only a few. And the cons were being restricted with my very creative marketing style. So I didn't want to be restricted with that. I didn't want someone telling me what I could and couldn't say, because that's the experience I had at the previous office. I always needed permission to say something or to do something differently. I wanted my freedom with my holidays. I need to go on my holidays. If I don't go on my holidays, I start to feel like it's Groundhog Day. That's my happy... The way to refill my cup is just to get out, reset. And I still work on my holidays, but just to get out and reset, that was one of them. There was a couple of others. And anyway, I made that proposal to Nathan. He shook my hand straight away. My stomach fell out of my ass, and they're always getting back into real estate. And then fast forward about 6 months, I got busy pretty quickly. Nathan was getting quite busy, his assistant at the time, and we supported her with this. She went to work at TAC. She's now at TAC and really happy. She's planning, family and that sort of stuff down the track, and that's much more suitable than a 6-day-a-week job working open homes on the weekend, blah, 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 and phone ringing after hours. So Liv went on her way, and then we took on Bindi, who's an ex-police force absolute weapon in that world, got a great reputation in that world, but it was just burning her out, and she wanted to try something new, and we wanted someone who didn't have any bad habits from a previous office, and it was perfect.
So she's in admin, supporting the two of you?
Predominantly Nathan,
Yep.
but she is so supportive. If she can tell when I'm struggling a little bit and say, Mitch, what do you need me to take off your plate?
So at the moment, you're doing everything yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's... I'm very thankful right now I don't have a wife or kids, because that's just whenever anybody asks me how do you do it, that's how I manage it. Yeah, after hours it's a lot of admin, and there's some nights where I work till 8 p.m. just punching in data, and admittedly a lot of my admin has fallen onto the back burner and really piled up, but that doesn't matter for me. So long as the homes are selling and people are calling me wanting to list and they're getting the service that I preach and advocate, everything else is fine. Everything else will figure itself out.
You seem like you're happy with it.
Extremely.
Yeah.
I seriously get goosebumps over my job at the moment. I've never had that feeling in my life.
It seems, and again, I've seen some of your Instagram reels, and even just hearing you talk, there's a polarity between your life previously in real estate to where you are today. You're on a mission.
It's a completely different person.
Yeah.
And a lot of people in my circles will say that all the time. They'll say, you have changed completely.
What's been the biggest change?
The first thing that comes to mind is ego. There's certainly still an ego. I think we've all got an ego. I get quite spiritual about all this sort of stuff. But I think we all have an ego, but mine's quite under control now. I'm confident in myself, and I have a good ability to trust what I'm doing and know that it will take me into the right direction. But in the past, it was a very self-fulfilling, self-validating, self-inflating...
Caring a lot about what other people thought.
Extremely, yeah. The curse of comparison was real. It was just everything I was achieving, there was no celebration. It was like, I started achieving this, but XYZ is doing more than me, so I need to start doing what they're doing. And then once I started doing what they were doing, it was the next person. Oh, I'm not achieving what they're doing, so I want to be doing more. So it's just a constant...
Yeah, I'm not sure of the attribution, but that idea of comparison being the thief of joy is real.
Absolutely.
Yeah. A couple of things I wanted to sort of talk about. Obviously, I watched one of your Instagram reels, and you were walking down a street somewhere. It might have been Herne Hill, maybe. And you had I thought for a minute that you'd been in the industry for like 20 or 30 years, and I thought, hang on, he doesn't look that old. He keeps in pretty good nick. But you were talking about comparison of people entering the property market. I think you had an Addy
newspaper.
You had a newspaper from, was it 20 years ago? Something like
correct.
that. Yeah. And I thought there's an interesting parallel there between comparison and people thinking that there's no potential for them to either get into the property market, or that there's no value in them getting into the property market. All of the growth and the sort of appreciation in property has already happened. Maybe just talk to that little Instagram, if I interpret it right. What was your message? What were you trying to get across in that little reel around comparing 20 or 30 years ago versus today?
I think there's two strong messages in that. A, there was no properties for sale in Herne Hill in that newspaper, but Geelong West, Manifold Heights, it was gone gangbusters in that newspaper. So it was to testify that this is clearly a tightly held suburb, and so it should be. I mean, you look at it now, it's very different to what it was 20 years ago.
Yep.
So that was the first message I wanted to get across. And the second one was, and I didn't go on this because I only had a minute and a half in the property video to explain, to then sell the property, but the property prices were just ridiculous. There was people buying what I was selling for $500,000 less 20 years ago. The properties, I sold my property for $660. 20 years ago, the same property was selling for $200,000. And if I grabbed a newspaper from 20 years prior to that, it would have shown the same thing. It would have shown a drastic difference in price.
Here's the question. Is it more difficult? So in your 10 years, and I know you've only got the 10 years of experience, but you've spoken to people, you've got parents and you've got people that have existed prior to that have been in and out of property. people want to know, is it harder to get a property today than it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago? Or from a comparison point of view, are we just have nothing to compare it to? Like, it's very hard to pick up the values and the sense of what people are used to today, whether it be their cost of living, their willingness to spend money on discretionary items. Like the podcast guest that I had previously, so Lucy, who you met on the way out, we were talking about financial literacy, and we were talking a lot about the fact that there is a gap in financial literacy for the younger generation. And the question was, is that true, or is it just that ignorance was bliss 20, 30 years ago, that we didn't actually, most people didn't know what the hell they were doing with their money. It's just today we're actually spoilt by choice, and we also are now spoilt by this, or we're confronted with this constant comparison of saying, well, my parents were able to buy a property for $30,000 on Minerva Road, 129 Minerva Road, they bought in 1978 for $30,000, and it's going for $1 million today. Is it harder, from your experience in that? I know it's a long-winded question, but do you think that it's harder to get into the property market today? What are you seeing on the coalface? Or are people just live different lives?
You're right. There's so much to dissect in what you were saying before, but if I was just to answer the question you asked at the end, is it harder to get into the property market now versus in the past? I would say it's harder to get into the property market now. Yes, banks are lending a lot more money with a much more pleasing interest rate than 12 and 15%, what some of our baby boomer generation were paying, even more. So that's much more pleasing. It sounds great. Don't get me wrong. But that's when we have to dissect it and go, what is, like, my generation buying their first homes, who are generally entering the real estate market, their spendings compared to what the baby boomer generation is messed up. And yes, a lot of it is your Netflixes and your Stans and your Uber Eats and all these other luxuries that we have in our day and age. But there's also things that are out of our control. I mean, one thing that gets spoken about really often is how house prices have moved up X%, but cost of university and schools, the cost of living and rent, that hasn't moved up the same percentage. It's moved up, in some cases, triple the amount. So your necessities have moved up a high amount of cost. Property prices have moved up even further beyond that. And yeah, interest rates have come down and things like that, but they don't outweigh the things that put up more hurdles to get into the property market. But then you dissect it even more. Yes, we do have terrible financial literacy, I think. And I'll speak for myself. I'm not very good with money. If I see something that makes me happy and I'll enjoy, I'll spend it there and then. So I think it's a mixture of both. I think we could go on all day long about what's making it harder to get into the real estate market. Or people could also debate on the other side why we have so many more opportunities, because I also agree that we have a lot of opportunities at our expenditure. When the baby boomer generation, by the sounds of it, I wasn't living then, but it sounds like they just got out of school, found a career in their local area, and then stayed in that for 40 years.
Had a family, stayed there, retired.
Bought a home at 21, at 20. So that, once again, that's showing the differences. But anyway, they didn't have anywhere near as many opportunities as us to just go overseas and work, to go to university in another country, to go to university in another state. They didn't have all those opportunities to start a business online. And
yeah, and that's where a comparison is obviously challenging when you compare generations, because we're not actually living in that generation. You can only take insights from the people that have been there. But I think a couple of things that you said around this idea of deferred reward, like, I think it is real that the current generation, myself and my children included, there is a sense of deferred reward, or having the pain to begin with before you have some sort of payoff is flipped on its head. Like, if you want something, you can actually get it now. Like, credit's easy, Afterpay, PayPal, you can have what you want now, and unfortunately then the pain comes afterwards. So we're having the payoff early, and then we're having the pain afterwards, which gives people a sense that they're really struggling. I think that idea of sort of discretionary expenditure, Lucy, I just used this example earlier, that the property I talked about was my parents' property, 129 Minerva Road. I think they paid $30,000 for it in 1978, 79, something like that. And when they wanted to do a renovation, so when they wanted to redo the kitchen, my father, Peter, was a school teacher. Mum was a stay-at-home mum, so one salary. And they didn't get a cabinet maker, and they didn't go to Bunnings and buy a whatever the prefab kitchen is. He built it. Like, he literally went and bought some timber, and he built the cabinetry himself, and he probably spent, $500 doing it, and it took 3 or 6 months to do it. It was just a totally different mentality. Now, yes, they were able to pay their home off before they retired. Great. But the expectation for them around having just, an unfettered amount of money available in credit to spend on discretionary items just wasn't there. We didn't go on overseas trips. My first trip to anywhere was the Gold Coast at 18 on a plane. My kids...
And that would have felt like going to LA.
It did. It was unbelievable. And I was grateful for it, and I was very happy, and I didn't feel like I was missing out. Yet my kids, I've got 5 kids, and they've all been to Europe multiple times. They've been to America multiple times. They've been to Bali multiple times. It's kind of that expectation. So,
I think we need to stop debating who had it better or who had it worse. I think what we just need to start talking about is, how do we make it better? Like, I was grinning ear to ear when I heard you talking about this, your father who built the cabinet in the home himself. I wish my father taught me to do things like that when I was growing up. How can we make it better? We could probably teach our kids once again how to do little tasks around the home, how to fix up your car. People's dads used to teach us this.
Well, I think what we've done is we've kind of outsourced. The idea of outsourcing our life has made sense, because if the idea of efficiency and technology, that these things will create some efficiency gain, and we'll be able to outsource that, and we'll be able to be more productive. Like the car, Peter, my father, used to, service his own XY Falcon ute in the front driveway. If you needed a new window winder, you went to the car yard and you bought it, and you repaired it yourself. And it's just a completely different mentality. But your point of, stop the comparison. This comes back to personal responsibility, and this is one of the key themes of us in sort of financial planning world and decision making, is that rather than waiting for big daddy government or interest rates or the world economy to start to allow us to be able to own the property we want, or have the cash flow to do the things we want to do, you have to control the things in your universe. You have to control the things that are within your control. And it's funny, because a lot of the things that you say are out of your control, they're actually in your control. You might not directly control them, but you can certainly control the decision you make or how you respond to it. And I think that it gets a bit sort of esoteric and maybe a little bit deep, but like, financial planning is not really financial planning, and maybe even buying a property, like selling a property, is not really about the property. Like, it is about what you're trying to achieve in life.
Where's the client want to go?
Yeah, where do you want to go? Like, is this a family home?
Not physically, but where do they want to go with their life?
Yeah, in life. Yeah, and I think that idea of personal responsibility is kind of lost when you start to compare yourself against others. And it's back to your original point in property, and your first stint in property, spending way too much time worrying about what other people were thinking and whether it was successful or not. And you go, well, hang on, let me get rid of all of that noise and just focus on what I can control. And it's funny.
Everyone loves building. Everyone finds camaraderie in complaining.
Oh yeah.
For example, what I mean by that is, there was a study done. I love psychology. I love the psychology behind everything. There was a study done, and I might butcher this, but there was a study done where they got two groups of people into a group of people into a room, and they, without them noticing, they said, okay, here's everyone's clothes. And the one group eventually had a blue outfit and one had a red outfit. And it wasn't obvious. It was just subtly that there was people wearing more red and people wearing more blue. And what happened was they gave, I think it was something to debate maybe, or to just a topic with no debatable part to it, but they left them in a room together for the whole day. And eventually, without even noticing, the blue group and the red group had psychologically started bitching about the other group, and they were loving it, is what they noticed. Yeah. They found so much joy in the camaraderie of having the same view, the same point, and the same. So it's actually what they they learnt a lot from that. But what they've mainly learnt is that it's actually contagious. Once people start to badmouth or talk badly about something or negatively or complain, it gets contagious. But what's happened is, and what we just spoke about before, there's no problem fixing or problem solving. There's no one looking in the mirror and going, how do I actually take my little baby steps to make things better? And Jordan B. Peterson says it perfectly. Do not judge the world before you clean your bedroom. And that's what I notice with a lot of people around me. They're complaining about the government and the parliament and this and that. And some of them, they literally don't even have a clean bedroom.
Yeah.
And it's like, no offense, but...
Sort your own shit out before you start to control the world. Yeah. That idea of teams, and I know Jordan's... I've been to see him a couple of times when he's been in Melbourne, and I could not concur more with that sense of taking sort of ownership of your world. So the idea of cleaning your bedroom's a fairly... Well, it feels like an innocuous one, doesn't it? It feels like people go, well, who cares whether or not I leave shit on the ground in my bedroom? But again, if you cannot organise the small area that you exist in, how do you think you're going to influence people in your life? How are you going to influence the people you love, the clients that you want to sell a product or a service to, or impact the world, your community? It's impossible. And that idea of problem, you don't want to be the world's best problem identifier.
And you just said before too, which scares me a lot, is when people, I think first home buyers actually get excited talking about a recession.
Yeah.
Like they get excited about it. And I'm like, I don't think you realise the other ramifications that come with a recession. Like property prices don't just drop and then the rest of the world stays normal. Things will go to shit. Like cost of living, yes, house prices will go down, but wars have risen from recessions and poverty. Like there's other ramifications of things to that.
It's not binary. It's not just we have a recession, the property's cheaper and you'll be able to get into your first property.
Yeah. There's a domino effect of serious things like that in the economy.
Yeah, and we're talking about economy on that sense of personal responsibility. I mean, the only economy that people worry too much about. Like I did 2 podcasts last week on the Trump effect, right? And people, the phones have not stopped ringing. A lot of external clients, some existing clients, about what does this mean to me? I said, well, what sort of influence can you have over his decision making? Zero. What can you influence in your own world? Well, we're already doing that. You can influence the level of risk you're happy to take in with your money. You can control your own household. So the economy that really matters for me is the Burke economy. Right? That's my household. And for yourself, it's the Mitch Falzon household. That's the economy that really matters. And we get, as you said, you get so caught up in worrying about things that are out of your control that you cannot influence, and then you just talk about. It's very easy to talk problems, isn't it? Like it's the easiest thing in the world to do. I can see an issue and I can point it out, but to be willing, first of all, willing to come up with a solution to a problem that you've got, and then not just tell someone that there's the fix to this problem we've got, but be willing to be involved in it, like be involved in the fix of that problem yourself. Geez, we got a little bit sidetracked there on property, mate. I think
you keep saying we're getting sidetracked, and I feel like we're just on a podcast, mate.
That's true. That's true.
I actually journal really often. I feel like if most people did this, it would make their lives better. I journal often, and I'll write down my problems, and 9 times out of 10, I look at it and go, I can't fix that, so who cares? Next, move on. Or that's a later problem, or that will be something that's not even a problem in the future. What was I thinking about yesterday? I was thinking about something yesterday, and I remember I was thinking when I was driving, I'm like, that was such a problem when it first arose, and it was actually a blessing. I can't remember what it was, but it actually turned into a blessing. I swear half of the time, if we looked at our problems and just trusted that maybe this will actually lead us into the right direction or into a positive direction, just trust it. There's nothing you can do about it now, but just trust it might take you in a positive direction. There's a good chance it probably will.
I think one of the issues there is that we live just about everywhere other than the present. Like we live somewhere in the distant future, which is anxiety about what's coming, or you live in wishing that things had been different. You're living in the past of the depressive part of your personality, and it takes focus. Like it actually takes genuine focus to be present, and
what you focus on expands.
Yes, and the things that you focus on should be the things that you can actually control. So in financial terms, it's your household. In your terms, it's the next call that you have with a client, rather than speculating about how the conversation will go. Have the conversation.
And in a spiritual sense, people roll their eyes at the word gratitude. It was the buzzword of 2024, I think. But just the more you're grateful for things, the more you just start walking through life and you just go, I freaking love everything. I love my dog. I love my... When I was... before that 2-year sabbatical, I was miserable. Miserable. Everybody around me thought I was happy. And I'd come home and be miserable. Now well, not now, but about a year ago, I probably had the least material things, money that I've ever had in my entire life. Like, it was a really, really big back turn, but by far it was the happiest I've ever been in my entire life. Happiest I've ever been. And it's because I was just looking at everything around me and I've gone, how awesome is this? I'm in a town where there's so many small businesses. I'm living in a street where I know all the cafe owners. I've got friends in other countries I can go visit whenever I want. I've got the best dog in the whole freaking world that doesn't even need a lead on. My cat's cool as. My home's cool as. I've got food on the table. I've got all these amazing things. And a lot of people roll their eyes at it, but it expands. The more you write down and take time to acknowledge things that you love and you appreciate, they expand.
On that idea of money, you said before, you mentioned briefly that you said, I'm bad with money. When you say that, what your sense of money and how you think about money and finance, why do you say that?
Yeah, I'm glad you actually asked that, because I don't think I'm bad with money. I think I'm very good at going, will this save my time? Something you spoke about before. And if it's a yes, it's take my money. If it allows me to put more time into the things that make me happy, or if it allows me to put more time into the things that allow me to generate more business or service my clients better, take my money. So I'm pretty bad at the moment. I think my accountant's going to have a bit of a shock when they look at how much I've been spending on the business and on clients and on networking and things like that. They'll have a little bit of a shock. So that's where I say I'm bad with money, because I don't think about, I just don't take a moment to actually...
But is there a corresponding uplift? So the question I'd have as a financial advisor would be, with those decisions to outsource, does it free you up to actually spend more time on revenue production and revenue producing activities, which is selling homes? And does it do that? And is there a corresponding lift? So when your accountant looks at it, if he says, listen, your expenses for client gifts and social media is up 50%, but conversely, we've got a threefold uplift in your revenue. Well done. Good job.
I'm not bad with money. I take that back. Because now that we've divulged it, I'm like, when I say I'm bad with money, it's because I'm in a habit of spending a lot of it, but it's on dollar productive things.
Yeah. So this flows on from Lucy's podcast, where was your source of education around money? Did it come from your parents? Was there a mentor? Was it self-education?
Great question. It was probably 3 different places that resonate with me the most. One of them was my mother. We didn't have much growing up at all, much money at all. And when I say much money, we did not have a lot of money at all. The second person that it stemmed from would have been one of my previous employers, who was extremely good with money. And I'll double up here with this person, because a very similar person would be one of my brothers, who's very good with money as well. Never made ridiculous amounts of money in terms of annual income, annual salary, but was very good with his money and paid off his home really early. And then the third would have been online and self-education. Self-education would be, I reckon, a predominant part of it, though. A predominant part of it. And doing that work on my ego was also a big thing that improved my habits with money as well.
So other than the transfer with work, what was the online mentorship? Who were you following? What was who gave you direction in terms of money, or just you mentioned Jordan Peterson, but he's not really money oriented, but you can apply those same.
I don't have a person in particular, but I was listening to like Diary of a CEO, Joe Rogan podcast, the whole array. I could tell you my favorites right now once I open it. Stoicism was a big one as well that helped me with my monetary habits.
Ryan Holiday?
Yeah, Ryan Holiday, yep. So the Daily Stoic I read every single year. I have no idea what that means, but I'd love to know.
It's the 4 Stoic virtues. So it's the temperance, justice, courage and wisdom, and the I is looking at me saying, make sure
this is in your control.
This is in my control.
Yep. Yeah, see, I'd love to be able to look at that and understand it quite well, because stoicism resonates with me so much. It's helped me solve so many of my problems. But things like that have helped me educate myself on my finances. I think a big thing for me was just being able to ask myself the question. I feel like this might resonate with a lot of people: is, do I actually need this, Mitchell? And do you actually want this? Like, for example, my car.
You were just talking to yourself like your mum.
But and
you called yourself Mitchell.
My mum will love hearing this, because as much as we clashed heads, I often speak to myself. That's my inner parent speaking to myself, going Mitch as third person. But often it's the things she used to say to me, and your kids will probably do the same thing with you. We hope anyway. But anyway, I often ask myself, what do I need this, and do I actually want this? Because my car is the biggest one at the moment, where people say to me, predominantly people love that I drive a scratched up Subaru and I'm a real estate agent. Predominantly people love it. But I get comments now and again of people saying, you need to upgrade your car, Mitch. You need to update your car.
Yeah.
And I just, and there, look, one person made a really good point. They said, Mitch, would you not iron your shirt and go to work? And I've gone, fair argument. Like you kind of stumped me there a little bit. But
I probably get an iron-free shirt that I need to iron.
Yeah. But I care about the iron shirt. I don't care about the car. Like, I don't care. You care. And maybe there might be a client in the future who looks at my car and goes, oh, I don't want that person selling my house. Cool, I don't want to sell your house. Sorry. But that's just how I feel. Yeah. If I really sit down and think about, do I want this? Do I need this? The answer's no.
Yeah.
And that's just one thing. But I do it with everything now.
Well, it's a reasonable sort of litmus test when you're thinking about it. And it's the question, as you were talking about the car, my head, because I have clients who always will ask me that question, Jay, I want to buy a new car. And I'll say, is it a want or a need? You start with, is it a want or a need? Well, actually, I've got a car, serves its purpose. No, it's probably a want. Okay, can you afford that that want? Like, is there means? Is there a surplus of capital or income that means that sort of need or discretionary car? Well, you could choose to get it and it wouldn't be an issue. But if you're starting with the want or the need, that's a pretty good place to start, rather than be sort of emotionally attached to that's a great car. And it's kind of the prototypical real estate agent, isn't it? That's got a flashy car, and you say, why have you got it? Oh, it's a great tax deduction. That's awesome. If you want a tax deduction, you can go and donate money to charity.
Correct. Thank you.
So I think that's part of that self-assessment, saying, do you really want it or you need it? It's a good education for any of those people out there. It doesn't matter whether you're in real estate or finance or you're just trying to make better use of your money. There are some assets that are just absolute leeches on your life, and cars are one of them. They're shit assets. They depreciate in value. They look and smell good for about 2 weeks. And if you happen to have a bunch of kids like I do, it doesn't matter that you've got a flashy white Mercedes. It's going to have smoothies down the back seat in a month, and it doesn't matter.
And someone said to me the other day too, they actually asked me the want or the need question, and I said it was a want, and they said, Mitch, can you grab that money, put it on the ground in front of you and light it on fire, and your life would be fine? And I was like, it would be fine, but I would be anxious thinking, I probably should have paid this off and that. And he goes, then you probably shouldn't buy it. If it's going to interfere with your frequency of getting work done and being efficient in your job and cause you more stress and lose more sleep and blah, 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 then you probably shouldn't do it.
Yeah. In sort of that financial education that you've had, both your self-education, your mum and some of your mentors, is there any one bit of advice, financial or otherwise, that you applied to your situation? And if so, how did you apply it?
If your gut's telling you this doesn't feel right, you're probably right. If your gut's telling you that your mentor's sitting in front of you and giving you great advice, but you still don't exactly trust them, something that happened with me, you're probably right. If you're in front of a client and you're getting a feeling that this person's irritating you, just talking about commission and fees and costs, you're probably best to just let it pass and let it leave. It's
that idea of using your instinct and trusting it.
Trust that instinct. And if you trust that instinct and you keep making mistakes, it's probably a little bit of work you got to do in yourself, a little bit of self-training or a little bit of wisdom that you've got to gain. And you've got it at your fingertips of your phone and podcast these days. But yeah, trust your gut. I've trusted my gut this year, and it's all falling into place, and it's fun.
The interesting thing is that, but it's an ongoing battle, isn't it? Because the day that you trust your instincts a little too much, or you become complacent, I suppose, is the day where you maybe overstep, and instinct is no longer instinct, it's ego. So the ego sneaks back in and is telling you to do something that maybe you shouldn't be doing.
And temptations come along too.
Yeah. You mentioned clients, so let's talk a little bit about properties and clients and what makes for a good client and a bad client. And maybe when you're at the coalface, you're selling properties, what are some of the things that people can do in today? Well, let's talk about how you see the market today. So the market that you operate in Geelong, what is your view broadly on where it is at? So you can answer that however you like. And then if someone is wanting to get in the market or out of the market, what are some of your tips in terms of how they should be thinking about the market and operating in today's environment? So again, very broad question, but what's the market doing at the moment, and what are your tips to people that are looking to get in the market today?
Yep. If you're priced up to $1 million and you're not selling, you're either mismarketed or overpriced. It's that simple. Unless you're 0.01% of the population of listings that's uber unique. And I say 0.01% strongly. Like, because a lot of people go, I've got a unique home, and it's like, I look at it and I've gone, yeah, it's got a cute backyard. But when I say unique, I mean unique. So if you're up to $1 million and not selling, you're overpriced or mismarketed. If you're between $1 million to $2 million at the moment, it's a little bit slower moving, but the same principles apply. I think that if you're not selling between that price point, you're either overpriced or mismarketed, or you're a renovator specific home. And I've got some properties that on paper, because of land size and position, they're well and truly over $1 million. If you look at it on paper and compare it with homes with different prices, it's worth it. But as soon as a buyer looks at it and goes, I'm buying a renovator property for over $1 million, it's still a little bit daunting in these markets. So to anybody trying to sell those properties, I would say stand strong. Just be a little bit patient. I think that's going to improve in the next 3 to 6 months. If you're over $2 million, that's just its own market. It happens when it happens. There's no such thing as good or bad market at that price point, I don't think. Usually people at that price point, they're buying with cash or they've got their finances sorted. So that market sort of just happens whenever it happens. Especially at $2 million plus, every home is very unique and very different. So it's a matter of finding that right buyer. And if you're not marketed well at $2 million plus, or you've cut corners of marketing, good luck finding that right buyer. And then good luck if you do find them. Good luck that they get to your front door and feel mesmerised by your home, by the marketing. The first moment they step on the doorstep of your home, good luck. I think it's very important at $2 million plus that you just marketed well. But overall, I think what I'm saying overall is that I do think it's a very positive market.
What you mentioned Herne Hill earlier. What are your favourite areas, and where are you seeing the most movement, or most tightly held, where there's just not movement, but if you could get in there, you think it's a good move?
Manifold Heights is crazy. As soon as a home goes in the market, it's sold. Anything Manifold Heights, Premium Newtown, Geelong West, any of your premium blue chip suburbs at the moment, there's a massive generational shift. And then with the interest rate drops as well, there's a lot of growing families who are going, let's buy that dream home. So I'm experiencing that firsthand at the moment. I'm seeing that firsthand.
So where is the bulk of your market at the moment? Your clients, where?
I go everywhere. I've become a bit of an attraction agent in Herne Hill, Geelong West, around the Bellarine, which has happened naturally. But it's funny. A lot of agents sell themselves as area specialists. Mm-hmm. I'm not an area specialist, and I don't think I fit into that. I don't desire to be an area specialist. I'm a client specialist. Like I specialize in a type of client. So when it comes to suburbs, I'm not really too fussed. I'm a believer that if you're a good agent, you can sell in Herne Hill or Geelong.
So what is that type of client?
I think the type of person I'm attracting I know the type of person I'm attracting at the moment is the type of person who wants to go, who values time like I do, and they want to be able to sign and go, Mitch, there's the keys. Call me when you have offers. And that's what I've become, which is really fun and really cool. My client can I got a client of mine who the tenant left with scuffed walls, messed up carpets, like ruined carpets, everything. They needed staging the whole lot. She's a developer. She's busy. She's got a business. She's got 2 kids. Her husband has a full-time job as well. She literally just handed me the keys. I booked in the painting, the carpets, did off-market buyer creation. So it became, I was like a property manager at the same time. But that's who I actually enjoy. That's who I actually enjoy being. Because hospitality days, it was about service. Not about numbers on the board or KPIs or any of that bullshit. It was just about give people a good experience and then trust that they'll come back for dinner next week or in a month's time when mum's birthday or whatever. That was how it was. And so I've translated that into real estate. And some people would say, my previous directors would say, Mitch, you're wasting your time. The time that you could be booking in the painting, you could be cold calling. The time that you could be putting in carpets, you could be door knocking. Yeah. They would say things like that. I can hear them saying those words in the back of my head, but becoming that agent, I feel like that's a part of the market that I've really filled.
I think that's the idea of like moving from transaction to relationship, and I think nearly every industry that we function in, whether it be the financial planning world, there's been this evolution. The legal industry, they're moving from a perspective of things being very transactional to now knowing that if you don't have relationships, you're cooked, because technology is evolving very quickly. It's creating efficiencies. People will be able to do some things themselves. A lot of things they'll be able to do themselves. And the decision point when they're picking a professional, whether it be a real estate agent or a financial advisor or a lawyer or an accountant, is how's the relationship? Is this person an aggregator of services? Can they actually pull together everything that I need? I'm time poor. I want a result. Will they actually deliver that for me and do it in a way that I wouldn't be able to do myself? I think those people that miss out on the relationship part of it, and again, I'm very biased in this respect because that's what we've done for 25 years in financial services, is we've avoided like the plague being a transactional business. Even though we could do it, we could be very profitable doing that.
Temptation's there.
The temptation is definitely there to churn and burn and to rape and pillage. And my view, and this comes from my father, and it's disseminated through the whole team here, is that Geelong, particularly, we're in Geelong, Melbourne, and the Golden Valley in Shepparton. You can have a short-term win, right? This is almost
some long-term ramifications.
You can, and this is almost back to that idea of not deferred gratification, but actually having a success up front and then having the pain later. Is that if you burn people, particularly in Geelong's a great place. I love it. I've been here for most of my life. But if you rape and pillage, and you'll do okay in the short term, everyone knows everyone. There's a half a degree of separation between people. So if you do the wrong thing by people in Geelong, you may as well just pick your shit up and disappear in a couple of years' time, because it's not going to hold you in good stead. You're not going to have longevity in an industry with people. And I think that is what people want. That's what I'm hearing anyway. Our family groups want support. They want to know that as an advisor, that I know their real estate agent, Mitch, and that we have a relationship and we can work together for their benefit. You've got to surround your clients with some love. You've got to surround them with some service.
And I think you could do those things 10, 15 years ago. Like you could rape and pillage and have a aftermath of pissed off clients, but then somehow snowball and create more business. You could do that 10 to 15 years ago. I'm a bit, this might sound like I've got a foil hat on, but I'm noticing a lot of directors start to plan for retirement at the moment, a lot of directors of offices. And I think, I have a feeling it's because they know that it's going to start to affect their business sooner or later. There's some directors of offices who have terrible reputations in regards to their professionalism. And I think to myself, like, how do they keep getting more business? But I just had an experience with a home in Drumcondra recently where they called in maybe 2 or 3 other directors of other companies, and then myself. They got a referral to me. And they actually said to me, once they met with me, they said, Mitch, we were warned the person who referred you said, watch his content and everything that he talks about so that you're prepared for these objections. Because sometimes, for these things that agents say, because sometimes agents say these things to try and win people's hearts, but it's all bullshit. And I call it out on the social media. And she said, Mitch, it was awesome that we had the chance to go through your social media, because when we saw these things that you were talking about that other agents were saying, we didn't really think much of it. She goes, there was one that you said we even kind of rolled our eyes and we thought that's a bit, you've exaggerated that a little bit, Mitch. But she goes, one of them actually said that in the listing. And we knew once they said that that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to stick me into a position where I feel like I need to sign today. And she was fully prepared for that. And she walked away. And what I hope is, the reason I'm bringing that up is I hope that myself and whichever other real estate agents in Geelong decide to do what I do and call out the bullshit and stay on the right path of doing things the moral way. I believe that the public will start to be more aware over time of all these little sales tactics. They'll almost be like little salespeople themselves.
So tell me some of these tell me some of these sales tactics. What are they? So give me
the list could go on. The first thing that comes to mind happened recently was an exaggerated authority period that they put on the authority. So in a sales authority, there's a speculative amount of days, not speculative, agreed amount of days that you're in exclusive authority. Generally speaking, that's 90 days. So the agent has 90 days for them only to sell that property. If that 90 days surpasses and they haven't sold it, the client can go list their home with another agent. Now, when I do it, it's always 90 days. And I'll say this on podcast form, so it's out there for everyone. If a client says to me, if they've chosen me, I always make very clear. It says 90 days, Mr. and Mrs. Fendor, but if you decide in 1 week that Mitch is all talk and no walk, I will rip this up. And I said, I'll even put it in email writing for you. I will rip this up and let you go to whatever other agent. And that's just a testament that I back my service and skills 110%. But a lot of other agents will know that this client's overpriced or they've promised them a high price and this is going to be a lot of work to get their price down. So they'll sneak on there 180 days or 200 days. Or I've seen 365 days before. There was one that was 600 once. An agent out to the lovely banks, and I wouldn't even call them real estate agents. They opened their office for about 3 months and it closed down. But 5 years ago, they signed up a client with a 600-day exclusive authority to just mess with these people. They don't realize they'll promise them a high price, tell them everything they want to hear, lock them in, and then they can't go anywhere else. So that's just one. A lot of old school agents will purposely try and be the last agent into the home. So if you call up the agent and you say, hey, I want to sell my house, they'll say, cool, tell me your story, try and build rapport, blah, blah, blah. When are you calling out the other agents? I've got Mitch Falzon coming in on Thursday and I've got Joe Blow coming in on Friday. Cool, can we come in on Monday? Or what time is the Friday appointment? 2 o'clock. Cool, can we come in at 5 o'clock on Friday? So they'll purposely try and be the last agent. And this is what happened with this Drumcondra listing. They purposely secured a time to be the last agent. And just kept saying to the client, when the client said, all right, we need to think about it now, they just kept saying, oh, we're the last agent, do you really need to think about it? What if we change commission? What if we change the fees? What if I could guarantee that I could get a higher price? What if I, what about all the time you're going to waste and the sleep you're going to lose thinking about which is the agent that's right? You like me, don't you? Because they'll pull out things like that. So that's another one.
These are generally people that this is their first experience with a property purchase or sale.
Yep.
So for those people out there that are either buying or selling for the first time, what are your top? How do they prepare themselves? Top 3, top 4, however many you like. What's the top tips you're selling or buying a property for the first time, and you need to be prepared for the potential onslaught of agents, advocates coming your way? What should they be doing?
My favourite piece of advice to any person considering selling a home is do not shoot the person who's telling you what you don't want to hear. Because I think, it takes bravery to sit in front of somebody with their home, their pride and joy, and to tell them that either they're overpriced or their home shouldn't be marketed a certain way, you shouldn't do auction or private sale. Really trust that person that's got the bravery to tell you what you need to hear. That's probably number one. If the conversation about price is going on for longer than 20 minutes of what the home is worth, I would start, and this is generally speaking, I would start to lose a lot of trust with that person. Because if they need to talk for 20 minutes about what your home is worth, they either are just talking to fill time to sound intelligent, but they actually have no idea what they're talking about with price, or they're trying to really justify a price that's not the case. Price is a super quick conversation. And then the third and final, and I believe this since I was in real estate my whole life, if they're going to drop their fees in 10 seconds, they're probably going to drop the price of your home in 10 seconds to make sure their paycheck gets across the line. In far less than 10 seconds to make sure their paycheck gets across the line. You should be hiring someone because they're a marketing specialist, a professional in their field, so they should know price, and also someone who knows how to negotiate. And the commission talk and fees talk is the perfect opportunity for a seller to know whether or not that person's a good negotiator or not. And I'm not saying I sit in front of clients to get arrogant about my commission. I work in unique ways of doing my fees so that the person selling the home has as much trust as they need that I'm going to work tirelessly to get the best result out there. I'll work things out. But if I was to sit in front of someone and say, no worries, I'll drop my fee to XYZ the same as the other agent to get your business, that doesn't give me a whole lot of faith that they know how they're negotiating or that they even care two pieces about what your home is worth.
Now, we didn't touch on it. You mentioned it briefly, but you're a trained negotiator. What does that mean? Is that what you did at uni?
No. So when I started my career in real estate, I looked at real estate agents within Geelong.
Yep.
And Chari Emazadi was one of them. There was a couple of others that were doing some pretty impressive stuff. And Chari Emazadi, I noticed, even though it was Corio and Orlane, he was selling a lot of his properties, the volume was just massive. And this, at the time, he stood out from anybody else in Geelong when it came to volume. You know, there was some great agents I went to learn off who were selling about 30 or 40 or 50 homes a year. But Chari was one where I was like, this must be something special. So I handed out my resume to a couple of officers and the Barry Plant and went in there. Barry Plant gave me the chance for a week to go out on my own straight away. And they said, there's a phone, a pile of papers from 7 years ago of people who came through our open homes and your computer, make some phone calls. And I had a white shirt on. It was transparent with sweat within 10 seconds because I was so nervous. And I thought I was going to get fired, but then the second week they gave me a chance to actually work underneath Chari. And I thought that's awesome. Rather than being in the room next over from him, I can actually be in that room and be working for him. So with him, and I say I'm a trained negotiator because with him and being in Corio and Orlane, you had to be on your A game with negotiation. Because selling a property in Geelong, Western Newtown, when they're beautiful and they've got character and full renovations, that's easy to sell. When you've got a pergola with no permits that looks like it was built by a 4-year-old and 3 bedrooms that are covered with black mould and the floors are like a wave pool and the roof is not even attached, you have to be a pretty good negotiator.
Yeah.
So doing that for 2 years, and we sold, I think it was close to about 400 homes in my 2 years with him, somewhere around that, you really refine your negotiation skills. And when I was with him, we did conferences to constantly keep ourselves trained. We were in a room together. So if I was on the phone negotiating, often you'd go on loudspeaker and the directors would sit in the room and Chari would sit in the room. And even though we don't see it eye to eye with the way that we treat real estate and treat our clients, they do have the art of negotiations down pat, the ruthless art, the ruthless side of negotiations down pat. I've tweaked my style, but they did teach and train very well when it came to the negotiation side of things. And firsthand, the experience, selling 400 homes in 2 years, you were constantly negotiating or writing up a contract or dealing with objections at open homes. You were constantly dealing with something. There was never a moment to kick back and relax. I don't remember ever leaving work early. It was very rare.
Now, Mitch, I'm mindful of time. I'm sure you and I could probably talk for another 3 hours on these topics. I wanted to close on a couple of things before I give you the last say on how people can get a hold of you. But I mentioned that I'd watched some of your social media. One of your posts talking about property advocates. And we're talking about negotiation. How do you think about someone that's entering the property market for the first time and they're maybe have a shortfall in experience actually engaging someone to help negotiate on their behalf? What are your thoughts around property advocates supporting people in and out of the market, and how do you think about them?
I think they're needed more than ever. First home buyers make the most mistakes, but the most avoidable mistakes. Like, they're very simple and small things. They're nervous about the negotiation with the agent. They're nervous about buying their first home and having a loan and having repayments. But then the basic things, like what a contract should look like and meeting a conveyancer first, to have that organised and making sure you've got the right professional and you haven't just jumped on Google to find your finance provider or anything like that, just making sure you've taken the right steps to be prepared. all of that could be avoided. And even the aftermath with signing a contract and doing a building and pest inspection XYZ, all of that can be avoided by getting a buyer's advocate. And on top of that, your buyer's advocate negotiates for you. So let's say they're worth 15 grand, right? The buyer's advocate. They're probably going to negotiate you a better price than if you went in there on your own. You can never prove that. You don't have a time machine, but they're probably going to get you a better price than if you went in there on your own, full of emotion, full of excitement, no idea how to negotiate. Let's be honest. Most of you have got jobs out there in the population. You're not negotiating. You're not doing all that sort of stuff. You're not in the dark arts all the time. So you'll probably get a lower price on top of that, and they're going to help you avoid all the serious mistakes. Like, for example, with a building and pest inspection. There could have been something you noticed on there that the buyer's advocate goes, hey, that's either going to be expensive, or in the long run, when you decide to rent this home out in the future, that's going to inhibit you from having a good rental, or being able to rent the property, or being able to do whatever, So it's a no-brainer. And the time you save going through open homes and things like that, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, it's nice to hear you say that. I think that idea of, I mentioned it earlier, maybe on this podcast or the previous one, about the importance of actually being prepared earlier. Most people try to make all of their decisions at the point of execution, rather than like doing some pre-work, getting organised, getting their ducks lined up in terms of their finance, property advocates doing the homework on their agent, speaking to a financial advisor, all very helpful things to actually make sure that you make good decisions. We've had Tony Slack on the podcast a few episodes ago, probably 100 episodes ago, but we're certainly huge advocates of people getting support around them to help them make that decision. Part of that is making sure that you pick agents that you trust and that have got the same principles and morals and values that you're wanting to see that you see in yourself, and that you'd expect when you're having one of the biggest transactions of your life. For most people, if it's their first home, that's what it is. It's the biggest transaction they've ever done. So I suppose the closing comment from myself is on purely the property front, and you're making decisions around entering or exiting the property market. As you've said, Mitch, and as I've said 1,000 times on this podcast before, take the time to get organised, get your ducks in line, do your own sort of financial health check, know exactly where you stand, so that you're not at risk of making uninformed decisions when it comes time to execute on that property, whether it buy it, sell it, or any other investment for that matter.
I just want to say quickly, I've seen a financial advisor recently, and it was just to organise and boost up my superannuation.
Yep.
They've helped me prepare for the future, and I said to them, is it often that people my age come to you just to do superannuation checks and that sort of stuff? They go, no, but I wish that they did, because it's more common that we meet people when they're 65, 70, and it's too late.
It's a huge gap in the market. Again, I'm referring back to the podcast with Lucy. This is exactly what we talked about. Unfortunately, there's a gap in two things. It's the financial advisor's fault. It's our fault as an industry. This fault as a business is that we've done a poor job of actually educating and explaining to people what financial advice is and where it's of value. And so part of the idea of the podcast is also to give people a bit of a peek under the hood of what we do. We're not just selling super products. We're not just selling people insurance or buying them shares. It's the jigsaw puzzle of their life, and actually drawing together the connection between all of those areas to give them the best possible outcome they can have in the future. Now, we've done a bad job as an industry, but also the industry has challenged people with not a lot of money to be able to get advice. It's actually quite expensive, or it has been, due to a lot of reasons, to actually go and seek professional advice. And what we're trying to do is make sure that we provide an avenue for people to be self-educated. So to say, here's the resources. We've got all the resources that you might need. Listen to our podcast. We've done a podcast on every single topic you can think of, from cash flow management to taxation, property investment, the share market. Take some personal responsibility. Listen to those. By the time you're ready to actually come in and get some advice, you'll have a basis for knowing what we're talking about, and you'll be able to make better decisions. But again, we could digress, and we have a number of times, which is great in a long-form podcast. Mitch, I'm going to give you the last word. If people want to get in contact with you, they want to sell a home, they want to buy a home, how do they get a hold of you, and where can they find you?
Just regardless, just jump on Mitch_the Geelong Agency on Instagram, and if you're not selling, you can be kept informed on the right and helpful ways to do things, and then by the time you decide to sell, you'll know where to come.
Cool. Well, Mitch, it's been a pleasure to have you on, mate. It's lovely to meet you for the first time. I'm sure we'll do this again. I'm sure we could do an episode 2, 3, 4, 5 and go down a number of different rabbit holes. But thanks for your time, and look forward to seeing you around the traps in the near future.
Thanks for having me along.
Thanks, mate. Enjoy Bali too.
I absolutely will.
All right, thanks. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you're keen to understand more about how financial advice could benefit you, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Burke Britton FP, or Google Burke Britton Financial Partners. Check out our client reviews, testimonials, and make a time to meet one of our certified financial planners by clicking Book Now on our website. Thanks for listening.
Any information contained in this podcast is of a general nature only. No account was taken as to the objectives, financial situation, or needs of any particular person. Therefore, before making any decision, listeners should consider the appropriateness of any information with regard to their particular objective, financial situation, needs, and seek independent advice from a licensed professional specific to their circumstances.
All right, hit it.
That translates to don't be a moron and act on what some random person says on a podcast. Take personal responsibility, do your homework, ask questions, and speak to an actual human that knows what they're talking about before you do anything. PB Financial Solutions Proprietary Limited, trading as Burke Britton Financial Partners, are authorised representatives of AMP Financial Planning Limited, AFS licence number 232706.